who is from IDC, is a well-known analyst and expert in procurement. Agentic AI, infused intake management, and the transformative impact is his topic. Patrick, thank you very much. We look forward to this, and I believe when we finish, please feel free to ask questions, and we can do a Q&A. All right, I'll hand you over and welcome Patrick Reymann.
Check, check. There we go. So thank you. I am Patrick Reymann with IDC. If you don't know what IDC is, who IDC is, we're a market intelligence and research firm in the procurement app space. We compete with the likes of the Hackett Group, Forrester, Gartner, Spend Matters. I'm very happy to be here, and as Carl said, I did have a little bit of a travel to get here. It was from takeoff to landing in Kuala Lumpur, 27 hours. But I feel great, surprisingly. It's going to hit me soon, I'm sure, but I still feel pretty good. So today we'll be talking about the transformative impact of the Agentic Infused intake management. And I don't know about you, but I'm a little tired of hearing that word transformative. It's used so cavalierly these days with respect to AI and agents and GenAI. You hear it all the time. But I do think it's appropriate, particularly with respect to the application of AI in the procurement app space. And I think it's helpful to kind of think back a little bit to where we are now and why there's so much interest in this space. And I have data to back that up, and I also have anecdotal evidence just based on the number of inquiries and the types of calls that we get, and just the overall interest. And really comes down to a fundamental reason, is that spend management in concept is fairly straightforward, but in practice it's hard. And if you think back to the pandemic and the post-pandemic supply chain challenges, all of that served to really highlight the need for a sound procurement application. Because suddenly we had this need to understand what is in our contracts, or how can we ensure certainty of supply, or how can we influence cost in an inflationary environment. So all of this, in spite of all of the unease that caused, was actually good for the procurement application space. So then you go forward a little bit to this generation's iPhone moment, right? And that was November of 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT, which was truly transformative. And then shortly after that, you had a number of different generative AI chatbots that came out. Mistral and Google Gemini and Perplexity and Claude and Grok more recently. And so that's just raised the level quite a bit. And then you go forward a little bit more, kind of late 23, and then into 24, it grew and grew and grew. And now in 25, it's just exploded. And that's this idea of agents in the agentic platform, right? And so procurement application providers are scrambling to infuse their applications with these capabilities. And I spend my days speaking to providers and users, and the claims already being made with respect to agentic capabilities are getting out of hand. And so often, what we hear is they will cavalierly say, oh, yes, we're an agentic platform, when in truth, they may offer some assistive AI chatbot type capabilities, but it's not an agentic platform. So in the source-to-pay suite space, in practice, many of the providers are challenged to provide a true agentic experience. And that's because many of them came about because they are a combination of bolt-on acquisitions, if you will. I need a sourcing application, let's go acquire that. I need a CLM, let's go acquire that. So there are very few truly organic, single code base suites that affords them the ability to be nimble and infuse the application with a truly agentic experience. And as an analyst, I'm neutral, and I can't promote any providers. But I can speak facts, and that is, it's a credit to Zycus because they have that single organically built platform that allows them to be nimble and to introduce this agentic approach that I feel pretty confident in stating that they're the first to have that in general release. Now, there are a lot of roadmaps out there and a lot of claims being made, but out there on the ground today, it just isn't prevalent. So that's a credit to Zycus, obviously. Let's see here. There we go, thank you. So it wouldn't be an analyst presentation if I didn't show slides and surveys and data from that, right? So this shows, a simple question. What is the state of your organization? What are your thoughts on, this is about GenAI, we'll talk more about agentic platforms, but about GenAI. It's a snapshot, 10-month span from Jan 24 to November 24. And you can see just in the span of 10 months, nearly 80% say either we have deployed GenAI capabilities or we've invested significantly in that space to do just that. And amazingly to me is that the number that say we haven't done anything yet, 8.6%. I mean, think about that. That's 2 years from November 22 to November 24. The adoption rate is staggering to get to over 90% that are at least doing something in that space in 2 years. I think that's staggering. Another data point, this is from a December 24 survey, about 900 respondents, CFOs, CAOs, CPOs, and said, for those of you who are planning to increase your IT spend in 25, and the number was about 50%, with another 30% saying it was going to stay the same. So of that 50%, what was the number one reason why you plan to increase? Right there. Because we need to infuse AI throughout our organization. So pretty dramatic. Now this is kind of an eye chart, and I apologize for that, but this is something that my colleagues at IDC put together that kind of helps provide a roadmap for the agentic evolution in enterprise applications. Now this isn't specific to procurement. It applies to all business, line of business SaaS applications. And we take a conservative view. I'm sure you've heard many pretty extravagant claims with respect to how quickly this is going to have an impact. But you can see here, as we go up the ladder there, we go from where we are today, the traditional use, to some level of using AI assistance, then some level of using some agentic component or capability, all the way to full agents as apps. So earlier this year, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said, he caused a lot of stir. He was talking about, and I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, look, SaaS is in trouble, right? because the agentic platform is coming. So your SaaS business apps are in trouble. But what he didn't say was those functions aren't going away. So perhaps in the future, instead of a procurement suite, you have procurement agents. That function will still be there. And he did later kind of talk back those comments a little bit. But this just kind of gives our thinking with respect to how things are going to play out. We've got about a 10-year roadmap here until we're going to see really widespread adoption of the true agentic platform. And this is my market forecast that's published every year in May. Unfortunately, my next one will be published next month. I didn't have the data in time to refresh. But the point of this slide is to show this is global revenue in the procurement application space, today at around $11 billion. And that's projected to grow at a 5-year CAGR of over 10%. And that's pretty strong for a very mature market. Very strong. In fact, that was increased last year by over 100 basis points. And I expect that when the new numbers come out next month, we'll see at least that. And this ties back to the idea that this is a strong space. There is a lot of interest. There are new entrants all the time. And quite honestly, it's tough to keep up with it because so much is happening. Okay, let's take it specifically to intake and orchestration. We call it spend orchestration. Seems like the market has kind of settled on intake and orchestration. Intake is not a new concept. It's been around for a long time. It's essentially however you ingest data to kick off a task, at its simplest. And spend orchestration takes it a little bit further. It's that ingestion and then the orchestration layer to facilitate collaboration, visibility, just that seamless, intuitive experience, kind of a digital front door. We think a better approach, if you can do it, is to build that capability organically. It makes for a much more seamless experience. It's probably going to be less expensive. And it's just more natural to be able to have that capability organically. And so it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. We think that a lot of those providers are not going to survive. Some will. But as the suite providers infuse their applications with these capabilities to the extent that they can, and I'm not convinced that they all can, to me it then becomes obvious. Why would you elect to go with a third party, so to speak, when it's there natively and organically in your chosen application? And I stole a slogan from Zycus, which I really liked: intake without AI is just pretty forms. Give credit to, I think I got that from Amit, but Amit does a really great job. Last year, he came up with, AI is the new UI, which I just loved, and I told him I wish I had thought of that. So, great job. So intake management, again, is nothing new. It kind of goes through the evolution of, what is intake management. In its earliest forms, it was email, fax machine, regular mail, right? That's intake management, that ingestion point. How do you receive that data to kick off a task or a process? And then we got to customized forms, which are an improvement, but if you didn't know the right inputs or use the right format, it could be confusing, not quite as intuitive and natural as it could have been. And then the rise of assistive, that assistive experience, something that kind of guides you along, that you can use to leverage, that kind of coaches you through the process to where we are now, or where we're going, which is that autonomous and predictive experience that can take that input. And just so we're clear, when I say that input, it can be anything from I need to raise an NDA. I need to onboard a supplier. I need to bring on a contractor. I need to find out where my opportunities for savings are. That's the intake that kicks off that whole process. So just a few examples, and I won't go through these. I'll just touch upon a couple of them. The whole risk management, the ability of intake-infused solutions that offer that real-time capability is a tremendous benefit for the risk management space. You know, the classic procurement risk management process was you would send the supplier a questionnaire and a spreadsheet. They would fill it out. You would score it, tuck it away in a file cabinet for a year, and probably wouldn't update it a year later. Very static, backwards-looking process. To where today we have real-time risk management scoring that infuses, live data, geopolitical data, economic data, weather data, whatever it may be, to provide that dynamic, on-the-fly scorecard that can then be used to surface and highlight those potentially risky events. And not only that, go the next step to suggest some mitigation strategies. Right? So very, very useful. And one that's very near and dear to my heart as a former procurement practitioner myself is the opportunity identification. So for better or for worse, procurement people are measured by savings. Right? And so you're always on the look for where's that opportunity to find savings, to generate. So as you have applications that can surface those for you, perhaps based on some user input attributes. I need to optimize for sustainability metrics, or I can only source from this geography, whatever it may be. So autonomous, optimized sourcing is truly a tremendous value to procurement practitioners. So the next evolution in the whole intake and orchestration, of course, is the orchestration. And think of that as kind of a collaborative procurement workspace, something that serves as kind of a traffic cop to sequence events and to ensure collaboration and provide notification, to assign team members, and just to highlight activity that is outstanding, that is required for a given task, given activity. So the sequencing is really a great benefit of the orchestration layer. And then the sourcing execution, kind of the same thing in that for a project or a large, complex, even bill of material type orders, there is necessarily going to be a tremendous amount of changes that happen, right? Delivery dates, prices, quantities. In having that layer that can understand, ingest those changes, make sense of those, flow them out, show the impact to the broader overall order, another great benefit. So intake management isn't just kicking off a task. It can be a core component of a true procurement transformation. And look at my time check. Okay, I'm doing okay. It supports all of these key fundamental areas of a procurement transformation. Certainly I talked about the automation, the visibility and compliance. I'll pause here just to say, I'm sure some of you may be thinking, GenAI and agents and intake and orchestration, this is all great, but don't make me decide. Don't make me figure out which of these I have to use, right? And that's a very real, legitimate concern. The bottom line is business value, right? ROI, ease of use, the user experience. And that's critical because ease of use drives adoption. Adoption drives increased compliance, increased spend under management, increased savings opportunities, all of those benefits that procurement provides. And so that's where the space is headed, to that seamless, simplified user experience. Okay, some forward-looking comments. Routine, tactical activities, AI can do these things. So, and that can be raise a requisition, gain an approval, find out payment status. All of these things, we expect that that's going to be commonplace here very, very soon. And then going forward a little bit, we'll start to see a much more heavy infusion of the predictive elements of AI to not only take a backwards-looking view based upon historical spend patterns and seasonality of demand, but to leverage that and to surface opportunities that suggest, hey, based on these things that are happening in the world, we think that this category, we expect that the price for this category in the next 6 months is either going to be a lot higher or a lot lower. And therefore, your sourcing strategy should change accordingly. And then we get to the true autonomy with human input that sets the attributes and sets the guide rails along the way, but that true autonomy that really facilitates that seamless experience and drives a truly agentic experience. And so we think intake management specifically, by next year, it's going to be widely adopted in some fashion, right? In some fashion. And that's going to come about because we're simply going to see the availability of availability of intake capabilities across the procurement application space. And we expect that the full suite providers are going to kind of wrestle back that momentum from these point solutions because they've kind of had their moment, right? And they've gotten some good market reception. But as we're seeing now, the source-to-pay providers are responding. And I think they're going to respond in a big way. And this is going to be commonplace. The term we like to use is this is going to be a table stakes offering going forward. When people buy their procurement application, they're going to expect some level of intake capabilities that come with it. And that's my last slide.